John, why are you scratching yourself so much over there?
Itchy.
Oh.
And there's so many different kinds of itches out there.
There are, yeah.
Right now,
I thought an ad would start like this. Keep going.
I'm feeling the spring travel itch.
Oh, I see.
Well
Well done. I see what happened.
I need to get some new threads for my adventures.
Yeah, you do. You need some luxe upgrades from Quince. High quality travel essentials. Guess what? At a fair price, John.
Okay, I'm intrigued, Dave. So how does Quince do it? You know what I mean? Like, how do they keep prices 50 to 80% below similar brands?
This is an easy one, John. They partner directly with top factories and cut out the cost of the middleman.
Well, and Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel.
You didn't know much about them, and suddenly you know a lot about them. That's amazing.
I
have sweatpants, Henleys, cardigans, all from Quince, and they're a perfect fit.
They do look great on you, right?
You.
You're wearing all three.
All right.
For your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince.
That's right.
Go to quince.com/dadville for 365-day returns. You heard me. Mm-hmm. You thought you heard me wrong, but you heard me right.
That's almost an entire year.
If our calculations are correct, 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order.
That's QUINCE.com/Dadville to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Dadville. Dadville. Yeah. Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with Dr. Morgan Cutlip.
Hey, long time. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Are you in the middle of like crazy book promo land?
Yeah.
The slow blink tells the whole story.
Do you want to just nap for the next hour? Like Dave and I can chat while you sleep.
I kind of did.
We'll read passages. I think John especially wanted to camp out on chapter 20, which I had a pushback on that. I was like,
that was kind of my favorite chapter.
What is chapter 20?
Take a wild guess.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would guess, but I was...
Yeah, you didn't want to get there, girl. We'll get
there in about 5 minutes.
I mean, is it... One quick question before we jump into this whole thing. Doing the press part of this, is it something that, you are sort of like, this is great? Is it something you're like, it's part of the job? And did you, maybe the better question is, did you know this was going to be like this when you started writing books?
No.
Yeah.
This is like the social media to musicians. It's like, I want to write songs and make albums, but it's like,
why do I have to do?
You gotta constantly be promoting. You like to write books,
Right. Yes, but now I'm in the business of trying to sell books.
Now you're talking to
and it's different. I love being on this podcast, so I'm so grateful. But yeah, I'm exhausted. I had 3 weeks in a row of travel. I don't normally travel. Mm-hmm. And I was doing speaking engagements, which was great, but also just like you're on, you're nervous, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm feeling it. And plus, I did my last book. I basically wrapped that up and then started writing this one.
Wow.
So it's just been like, I feel like at the end of this like 3-year period, I'm gonna be like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's grandpa, and I'm like never getting out of bed. That's it. I'm done.
It's probably like childbirth. It's like by the time you're at the end of this cycle of this, you're going to forget all about
you're like, look at this cute little thing. Why wouldn't we do this again?
I've got an idea for a new book.
Yeah, exactly. I already have ideas.
What is your favorite part of the promo process? Is it like, I would imagine if I were...
You don't have to say Dadville. You can.
You can.
I want to leave that on the table.
That's an option. So let's say between Dadville and everything else, what's the answer? No. Yeah, I would imagine it would be like going to a bookstore and actually reading parts of the book.
Done that.
You've never done that?
Never. No, which I don't I mean, who knows why that hasn't happened. I'm hoping we do it this time, so I'm working on that. But, for my first book, I spoke at, have you heard of MomCon?
No.
It's wild.
We've been trying to get tickets for years.
You guys would be so funny there if you spoke, but it's basically, it used to be called MOPS. And now they've changed the name. And so it's Mothers of Preschoolers. They meet in churches.
Oh, yeah.
But then they have a national conference called MomCon. And there's like over 5,000 moms there. It's wild. So I spoke at that this past year. And then I did a book signing, and that was in May. My book came out September 2023, and that was my first book signing.
Jeez
Wow.
Louise.
Yeah, so I don't get it because I would love to do more live stuff.
I'm also imagining the parking lot at MomCon, just Honda Odysseys
For days. Also, if anybody like bumps their arm, they're just sworn. Like there's just, are you okay? I've got a nurse. Band-aid, Tylenol. It's just like you've never felt so cared for in your life. Everyone is so kind.
It's the best crowd you can ever
I can't
speak
imagine.
to.
Yeah,
can't imagine.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for being back with us.
Thank you.
This is I want to reread the bio because I just want to refresh her so people know. So Morgan Cutlip is with us again. She's completed her bachelor's degree in psychology at Miami University, her master's in human development and family science at the Ohio State University. I always laugh it's always every football player in the history of time, the Ohio State, and earned her doctorate in counseling psychology from the University of Akron. Hosts the Love Thinks podcast with her dad, John Van Epp, which I love that story. I was reminded of that when we were getting ready, that you and your dad's friendship and all that. It's just amazing. Mother of 2 kids, Effie and Roy, which I would buy that children's book, The Adventures of Effie and Roy. She created My Love Thinks blog and Motherload course. She's been a featured relationship expert with Teen Vogue, New York Times, Women's Health Magazine, MOPS International, Loveology, and Flow, the #1 app in health and fitness. And I love this, and I wanted to read this. This is your last comment on your kind of bio on your site. Quote unquote, I'm on a mission to help women feel empowered in all of their relationships so that they feel whole, light, and deeply connected to those they love, which I think is really, really great. And I want to start by saying this. This is a great book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
It's really good.
Thank you.
I told John, like reading through it, it's like, it's good when I literally was like, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel. Like it was just like page after I did so much like underlining and big smiles and stars and everything.
It's a great problem when you're going through the book and I'm, jotting down questions and it's like, I've got like 7 things and I'm on page 5. It's a great problem.
I know.
Yeah, this is a crazy experience in writing a book, which is that at this point in time, because it's not out yet,
right?
Mm-hmm.
My dad's read it, my editor has read it, one of my closest friends, and then I think my husband's read half of it.
Yeah, that feels
so it's like
all right.
You're like, I hope it's good.
Oh,
I hope it's. I know
right.
He got to like chapter 7. He's like, I've had so many revelations, and I was like, okay, babe, that's kind of wild because we talk about this stuff
That's a very unique
all the time.
experience for Chad. Is his name?
Yes,
for Chad to be reading this book is especially unique than obviously any of us. I'm thinking about, well, what does my wife think of this? All this kind of stuff. He's like, this is what my wife thinks of this.
This is what my wife thinks.
Yeah, there's no. Well, and it could be trouble for you, Morgan, too, because he can be like, well, that's funny. That's not what you said.
Exactly.
Like it is all he needs is to quote that book.
65.
Well, I wrote the story about the balloons that I opened the book with.
Yeah.
I wrote that like the day after it happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, babe, still like kind of fresh, I was like, you okay with this?
Oh yeah.
You okay with this?
You live the same life that like John and I live, and I would say even more so like a stand-up comic, where it's like every piece of life becomes content. Something that they sort of peddle.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it's like there's an old cliche, like if the people around you aren't on edge or whatever, then you're not really writing.
Yeah, that's right. That's
so
right.
if Chad weren't a little on edge,
sweet Chad.
You're not doing it right.
But the book is called A Better Share: How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. I only read 2 of those words when I saw the cover, so I was excited. I again, it's so good. And I think so it's about this idea of mental load, and you do such a good job of walking through what it is, how it affects each person in the couple.
We could spend the whole hour just talking about the mental load. side of things.
Yeah. So I feel like a really easy jumping off point is to just talk about mental load, because I feel like we all sort of have some version of it in our head, but you do such a good job sort of walking through what that is, which then kind of sets up the whole arc of the book. But can you just kind of talk about mental load for a second?
Sure. So I like to define it by giving kind of like the 30,000 foot definition, and then I kind of give the in the weeds definition, because I feel like that's where couples kind of miss each other. So the 30,000 foot one is the mental load is the seemingly never ending running to-do list we carry around in our heads. And it has two key features. The majority of the tasks in the mental load are invisible, which makes it difficult to explain to somebody else. Which makes it difficult to get appreciation for and to have your partner recognize it. And then the second piece is that it takes up cognitive real estate, which basically means it just crowds out space. You know, our brain can only hold so much. So it crowds out space for other things like finding peace. You know, it's like the stereotype of women, and it's this for a reason, which is like we can't relax. And part of it is we're just kind of always thinking about all the things we got to do. It crowds out room for patience, regulating our emotions, remembering things. We kind of are forgetful a lot when we're really kind of full. And I talk about this in the book, but it crowds out room for getting in the mood for sex. And that's a big piece when it comes to relationships. So the in the weeds definition is that, before I give it, everybody has a mental load. Like we have to say that when you're on social media, it's kind of like mental load is a woman's issue.
Right.
And it is because women tend to carry the bulk of it in the home and family life. But in life, we all have mental loads. So it's really important to understand that, because couples kind of can butt heads around, well, this is my mental load, this is my mental load. It's like, it's not a competition.
Right.
In the weeds definition is that there are 3 tasks associated with the mental load. There's the physical, and guys kind of dominate the physical tasks. This is like the carrying out of things. So mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, folding the laundry. It's like you're actually doing the stuff. So if you imagine it like a Venn diagram, that's one circle. The other circle are the mental tasks. That's like the thinking through of the steps or making lists. So that might be like, you know, all the stuff I got to do at work today, or this is my grocery list for today. And then the third are the emotional tasks. And this is the one that, like, if we're talking just a stereotypical couple, that guys tend to not fully get and that women have a hard time explaining. So the emotional is like the constant calculations of cause and effect experiences of members in the family. And a lot of times women are
that
trying...
was impressive. You just listed that off. Well done.
I've had to say it in front of like 5,000 people. And so
well done. Well done.
I got to get this one. But it's like thinking about, how do I maximize positive experiences for members of my family? And so you're like thinking through all the possibilities and all of the sort of ways of accomplishing that. And so it just takes up a ton of energy and the stakes feel really, really high. So this is like parenting decisions, school decisions. How do I avoid a toddler meltdown? How do I like put the puzzle together? And so this one is very tricky, because if you have a partner who doesn't think the same way, you can't really hand it off. And it follows you everywhere. Even if you work full time, you know, you're still going to experience this no matter where you are. It kind of like whiplashes you back into the mental load. So the final piece to understand is that when it comes to home and family life, most of the tasks are at the intersection of these 3 circles, which I made this up, but I call it the triple threat. And so a lot of times women will explain it to their partner and they'll feel kind of silly. They'll be like, I don't know, I'm overwhelmed because, you know, I got to make dinner and I got to like fill out these forms and I got to do this, you know, figure out the preschool decisions. And it seems kind of simple, but when you can recognize that each task gets unpacked to include things from each domain, you realize like how full every little thing is that we do around the home and family life.
Yeah, that is, man. I thought one of the things that was so impactful for me at the very beginning that you talk about, that you just referenced to, is this feeling. And again, this is why I basically just like consumed this book, was you do such a good job, I think, representing the way a man works. And I mean, everybody's different, and there's obviously so many nuances. And so I'm not at all saying like this is how every man. I just know I related so much to it, and I'm kind of every man in that way. No, but something that I thought was really interesting that you started with was this idea that like there is such a, I think for so many couples there is. I know for Annie and I think this is something we feel both is like. And you said it so well. So women, are dealing with, like you said, so many things. Like you just listed them so well. And
which I do think it's also worth stating, you state in the book, any one that you list off on its own it seems completely manageable. Yeah. I got to make dinner. No problem. I've got to pack lunches for whatever. I think that's a really, really valid thing for guys to remember. That we'll just make a list and knock them out, and then you're very likely to lose that emotional side of it, where it's like Medusa. You cut one of the heads, it turns into 3 or whatever. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, not to cut you off, Dave, but I just wanted to.
No, I'm used to it.
I was waiting for you to state that because it's really important, and you weren't going to, so I wanted to jump in.
So what I was going to say is. I resonate so much with this idea. Like I wrote it down, and I don't know if this is necessarily how you said it, but this is definitely his mental load is mostly work. Hers is everyone and kind of everything else.
Yeah.
And
what's the problem?
Yeah, So
we're good.
But I feel that, and I think why I bring that up is to say there is, and you do a good job saying this, but there is such a validity to how men feel that way. And I think it's easy sometimes to kind of feel like, because obviously so many moms carry so much of that stuff. I know Annie does, just managing all the things all the time. But I think for a guy, like it's I can get a little testy around that. I'm like,
oh yeah,
I know it's one thing or it's 3 things, but man, work is, and really what that I would say is provision, really. It's this idea of like, are we going to have what we need? That really feels like something I carry. It takes up, I mean, John and I talk about this so much, even not just on Dadville, just catching up, like how much of our brain space is on like, are we going to have enough money? Do we have the money?
Yes.
Where's the money? Are the kids okay? Are they going to have what they need? And so while it feels probably simplistic to some moms and females, it's really overwhelming. I mean, it may be just one thing.
But every swipe of that credit card,
I know,
is a separate thing. It's like, and then you can spiral into like, look, I know we're just getting lunch out again, and like we went out last night, but we're all stressed. We don't have time. Let's go out one more time. Now all of a sudden, I'm thinking of college. And weddings.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's such a good example because that's like a woman's brain about, I don't know, decisions around parenting, how it goes from A to B, and you're like, how am I all the way in college years?
Yeah.
Yes.
So for all the whoever it is, whoever the breadwinner is, who's like, look, this one thing, the making the money, you definitely should not be like, hey, I make the money, so now you deal with everything else.
Yeah, but
you should not be that way. But it should be stated like it's valid. We're not saying that it's not a valid weight to carry.
So I did survey data for the book, and then I interviewed men and women, and so I asked men. It's funny, I shared this recently on social, and people get so riled up about this. Like, we can't hear another perspective. Give me a break. But I asked men, what makes you defensive when it comes to the mental load? Like, what is it? And a lot of them said, like, don't forget everything costs money. And I think that, we have to acknowledge some of the differences in the ways that men and women have been socialized. And for men, it's your job is to provide and protect. And I know that we're like challenging these kind of like boxes we've been put in, and we're trying to stretch each other and grow, and I think that's all great, but still that exists at a fundamental level. And I remember talking to my husband way back when our kids were little, because he travels every week for work, and I remember being like, don't you feel guilty? Like, because I was like, in the beginning I was riddled with guilt about like going somewhere for an hour alone. I'm like, you're gone for days, how do you function? And he said to me, he goes, well, I do, but then it's kind of gone because I'm providing. And so if I'm checking that box, it's almost like everything else is treated as extra. And that's such a different shift from the way that women tend to think about things. And so I feel like it's important to understand this stuff, to not really put a judgment on it. It's like, that's just not helpful. But if we understand it, then we can come together and be like, okay, we're approaching this totally differently. How do we both feel appreciated and seen? And also, how do we both feel like the way we do stuff around here is fair?
John, but John.
Dave.
John. Hey, so sorry to wake you up.
Did I fall asleep?
Yeah, you did.
Sorry.
I just
Do you want to drive? I'm just so tired.
No. Well, first of all, I wanted to say I'd love to live through this. But second of all, while you were sleeping there, I wanted to it made me think of this. What did you dream about becoming when you were a kid? Like, what is it you wanted to be?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Early in the morning. I think I would have made a pretty good astronaut, you know?
Yeah.
Not like a great astronaut, but a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Or like an Olympic swimmer, maybe?
Yeah, pretty good Olympic
in
swimmer.
space?
Yeah.
How about you?
I had some dreams like that, but I kind of like the type of dreams we have now.
Okay.
Like now that we're older, John.
Uh-huh.
Like how you can take your skills and ideas and turn them into something real.
I see. Like instead of going to space where you might get stuck for like 9 months anyway, you dream about maybe like starting your own business, you're saying.
Even a business, John.
Business.
Yeah.
Well, to start a business, you got to have a website. You got to have a payment system, a logo, and a way to advertise to new customers. I tell people with that dream that all the time.
You do. That is one thing. I've seen you introduce yourself that way, which feels aggressive, but I respect it. John, we all know it can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But thankfully, that's where today's sponsor comes in. Hit him with the noise. That's right. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. And hey, they'll help you design a website with beautiful, ready-to-go templates to match your brand style.
That's right. Get help with everyday tasks like enhancing product images, writing product descriptions, or generating discount codes with Shopify's AI tools created for commerce.
That's right. Promote your brand with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And Shopify's always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support.
So turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial. That's right. You heard me right. $1 per month trial period and start selling today at shopify.com/dadville.
Go to shopify.com/dadville.
I'm going to say it one more time.
Do it.
Shopify.com/dadville.
Hey friends, I'm Annie F. Downs, author, speaker, podcaster, and part of the That Sounds Fun network. And I'm a big fan of seeing God move in our everyday lives. Can we talk for a second about what it really means to be a person of faith? It's waking up every day and choosing to trust him, even when life feels uncertain. It's standing firm in truth, walking in grace, and knowing that God is always with us. But I know staying rooted in faith is not always easy. At least it isn't for me. And that's why I love Glorify, the #1 Christian devotional app designed to help you start, grow, and strengthen your relationship with God every single day. One of the things I love about Glorify is the amount of options available to me through the app every day. Not only does it help me kick off my time with God with their daily devotional, but there's a song of the day to listen to and a community of other users available to engage with. It's really cool. With Glorify, you can begin your morning in scripture, reflect with the daily devotional, and end the day with the daily walk with God, this immersive experience that quiets your heart and refocuses your spirit. It's one of my favorite hacks, something simple but powerful that keeps you anchored when life gets busy. Join me and over 20 million believers who have found encouragement through Glorify. Download the app today at glorify-app.com/podcast, and let's keep walking in faith together. Again, that's glorify-app.com/podcast.
Yesterday, I talked to my wife about this because the whole thing with mental load is a very new concept for me, and I'm really fascinated by it. And to be just completely honest, it's just recently that I would say I have come to realize the mental load that Amy is taking on every hour of every day, all these things. And so I asked her about it yesterday, like, how are we doing in this regard? How would you say that I'm doing? Because in this area of our relationship, I would say we're pretty stereotypical. Like, I would like to think that I do a lot around the house and all those, like you said, those tangible physical things. I'm great at tackling those. I'll do the laundry, I'll do the dishes, all that kind of stuff. Do I know, like, Luca has a field trip today. Do I know, are they providing lunch there, or do I need to pack her a lunch? I don't know that stuff. I get all the emails. I don't read them. So I will completely fess up that I am the stereotypical dad who doesn't know, like, is practice happening tonight or are they off this week? Amy's got all that stuff. And it was interesting that I was just like, how do you feel about this? Because you're doing all of it. I don't really know all that stuff. And she was like, the fact that you do some of those other things, that does help. Mm-hmm. And she was like, the biggest thing is if you just acknowledge all that I'm doing.
Yeah.
She's like, that really kind of takes all the pressure out of any sort of potential tension between the two of us with that. Because it's tricky and you mentioned this in your first story with the balloons, where if I'm just coming to her and saying, well, just tell me what to do, that can be a little triggering. It's like it's hard to kind of explain why that doesn't solve the problem, and all it can kind of exacerbate the tension, but it's like, I'm annoyed that you don't know what to do, kind of a thing. Like I can turn into just another child that she has to give directions to,
Right. Yeah, and I think, I try to leave room in the book for every couple to figure out what works for you. Maybe she doesn't care. Like she kind of didn't say it bugged her that she understands what's going on with the field trip and all that, sort of all those details. And so I think couples need to really be able to talk about, like, what is it that we don't all need to know how to do all the things. Like that's not efficient.
That's not efficient.
That's not efficient. And so I think it's okay that we each have our areas where we shine. And what you said is so important, which is appreciation and acknowledgement go a long way. When I surveyed women and I said, what do you want most from your partner around the mental load? The first thing was initiative taking. We can talk about that. And then the second was appreciation and acknowledgement. And, in my own marriage, over and over again, this is what Chad and I have talked about, because since he travels, he really can't share in a lot of the load most of the time. A lot of times it's, all on me, except he does all the finances, which is huge. That was like a huge thing I unloaded on him, and you can do that anywhere. So have at it, babe. Yeah. But I've said to him before, like, what I can't get in deeds, I need in words. And when you give me that in words, I am like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
Because you feel valuable to your family. And I think it's important that we learn how to really step into giving good appreciation. I think I share this in a book where he used to... We fought for like 10 years around this issue because he'd be like, oh, you just need affirmation. And I was like, I don't know. And he'd be like, you're a good mom. I was like, you could say that you said that about our old neighbor. Like, a good mom? That is I'm sorry. That is
She's a
lame.
terrible mom.
But that's like, I was like, you say that about like half our friends. Oh, she's a good mom. I'm like, do I just I don't get anything special? And so, and he'd be like, and then it like, I don't know if you've ever been here, any relationship. So it's like, that's not it. And he'd be like, you just need too much. Like, what's your problem? Like, why? I can't get it right. I'm trying. Don't try to change me. And it becomes like this really big thing. And it's so simple. But I recognized eventually, I was like, this is what I need. I need to feel visible and valued. And this is how you can say it to me. Here's the compliment formula. It starts with something that you notice about me and what I'm doing, or a personal quality in me. So it's like an observation, plus the way it makes your life better. That is the best compliment. So it's like, I appreciate how thoughtful you are with the kids. It's something that I do not carry around in my mind because I know you've got them and they're well taken care of. Thank you. It's like, I could ride like 3 months on that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just one of those easy grabs that partners need to get really proficient at doing in their relationship.
Well, it takes, obviously it takes work, but I think it takes work especially because not every couple is, like Annie and I have a really weird dynamic because, she's not words of affirmation. She doesn't lean feminine on some things that for me would be the easiest thing in the world because I write love songs for a living. Yeah. Like I've got that, and it's hysterical. The guy was like, no, it's not going to be that easy, Barnes. Because I'm like, you look gorgeous today, and your turtleneck is just poised below your chin. She just doesn't care. So for her, it's so it's like it really does take work. Like you have to sit, and I think in a marriage, like especially over years, and go like, man, this is not, you have to go, hey, this just doesn't work for me. And I know it probably should. And some book probably says it does, but that doesn't, but this does. And so over the years, it's been funny, like this morning was a great example. I was reading the book and I was like, man, I need to just, sitting back in my studio. She's in the house. So I just texted her like, you're so great. I so appreciate the time you take with the kids. And literally she texted back, do you know where the, and I hearted my own compliments. And then she hearted them and said, oh my gosh. And I'm like, that's our dynamic. She's just not, words of affirmation are not a thing.
Yeah.
And
okay,
so, but other things are huge.
To me, if you are, but you probably like them.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
possibly an aspect of that is she knows how easy that is for you.
That's it. Well, amen.
Well,
Amen.
and also we love other people in the way that we like to be loved.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so we're like, oh, well, same with me. Like I can give my husband the best pep talk of his life and he'll be like, thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel so bad. Like I'm so unappreciative. It's not about me. He's acts of service, which we've gotten in arguments before. And I was like, that's so much harder than what you got to do for me, which is don't have that argument.
Yeah.
But we have to get out of our comfort zone and love our partner in the ways that they need to be loved. So she might be like, it might do it for her if you just like hop in there and you do the laundry and you do the things, and she's going to be feeling really taken care of.
Yeah.
And then for you, she's going to have to really appreciate that you just did all that stuff.
I mean, she used to have a reminder in her phone, in her iCal, that would say compliment Dave, and it would go off.
I think that's genius, though.
Yeah, she
do that.
Did it say Dave Barnes? There's so many.
It didn't, and that's where it got tricky because any Dave we would bump into just got adored, and that was hard.
This is so tough because when Dave Barnes and I were prepping for this, we're like, we need to set a time limit on the mental load thing, and I can already feel like there's just so much more to talk about on this. It's such a fascinating aspect of our lives, and I love that you're writing about it. But one aspect that I did want to say before we move on is and this is kind of for both, for the husband, for the wife, to have grace for themselves, because I think a big part of this that you talk about in the book is cultural expectations, right? Like you talked about the woman who has a hard time delegating some of this stuff to her husband because you want to get the exact right balloons. I mean, bad example, because in that example you didn't care about the balloons, but anything like you need this thing to go really well. You want the birthday party to go well. You want, and the men, I wrote down a quote that now it's lost in my notes here, but there was a guy who was like, it's so much easier for me to just turn the worry off and compartmentalize. And I think partly it's because I know sort of socially, culturally, that's not so much expected of me. I'm going to get a trophy if I just bring those balloons to the party. And everyone's going to be like, what a great dad you are. You went out of your way to get these balloons. Meanwhile, Amy's done everything else because it's more expected. Like if our kid has kind of a lame party, it's like, well, Annie and Britta, and they had great parties for their daughters. Like Amy really dropped the ball.
Yep.
So it's a tough thing because you have expectations that typically, Amy has expectations socially and sort of social consequences if she feels like she falls short on certain things that I don't feel. Those aren't real social consequences for me.
Yeah, and the reason why it's important to kind of put this out there is because those societal sort of norms shape the expectations we hold of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so a big fight that couples often enter into around this area is the woman will be accused of having too high of expectations.
Yeah.
Like your standard, like chill out. Your standards are way too high. And so it becomes this point of contention in the relationship. But when you understand, we go back to that. Men, your job, provide, protect. Women, your job is to self-sacrifice for the preservation of everybody else. So if you're not doing that, if you're not, taking care of your home, if you're not really doing a good job raising your kids, if you're too self-indulgent, you're sort of stepping out of those boxes. And we're challenging all this stuff, but it still holds true. And so that shapes the way that we enter into our relationship with expectations we have about ourselves as a mom, as a wife, as someone who takes care of our home. And so there's a mismatch there, usually in relationships that stirs up a lot of arguments.
Yeah.
So speaking of arguments, what are some healthy ways?
What are some of the worst things you've ever said
Yeah.
to Chad? Let's just
Go ahead.
list.
Just
The
like
worst things I've said to Chad?
top five. No. Okay. What are some
If you
What are some
concur,
healthy
Cindy.
ways that couples can talk about all this stuff without it blowing up in a fight and both getting defensive, all that kind of stuff?
That's a big question. So there's a lot of variability. So it kind of depends how each partner handles it. So I think one of the best ways is just kind of enter into it. Usually it's the woman bringing it up. There's a lot of people who get pretty fired up about that too. But my belief is if you're the one feeling the need for change, then it's kind of on you to start to initiate these conversations.
Yeah.
And I don't know many men who are like, I really feel like you're doing too much. We need to talk about this. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny when people challenge that idea. So usually she's the one bringing it up. I think a great way to start is to just sort of lay out, what the experience is like for you.
Yeah.
And to position the mental load as sort of like the shared enemy in the relationship and you and your partner as a team. So it might be like, I've been feeling really overwhelmed. You probably experience me as overwhelmed. When women are stressed, a lot of times we get kind of tense and kind of like this like go mode that doesn't feel super good to be around. So you've probably experienced me like this. Here's what's going on. It has a name. Can I explain that to you? You explain it. Can we talk about ways that we can share this differently? Or can I share with you a need that I have? I want something to shift around this area of our relationship. But I think the posturing of the mental load of modern family life, which is absolutely relentless, like the distraction of our devices, the hustle culture, this pull to always be productive, our high standards for parenting, all this stuff becomes like the obstacles every couple needs to learn how to tackle together. So if you can put it as the enemy and you on the same team and you're versus that's
great.
Then it really does a lot of times help to sort of just like curb any defensiveness that might show up.
You kind of triangulate
conversation.
against that as opposed
Exactly.
to squaring off against it. John, look, we love to have a good time with these ads.
We do.
It's what we do. This one's a little heavy. We got to start a little heavy, but it does get better.
You ready for me to hit you with some heaviness?
Hit it.
By the end of this episode of Dadville, another family farm is going to close its doors for good.
And people don't know this, John, but this is a true story. My granddad ran a farm in Mississippi.
Yep.
So this hits home, okay? This spring, here's the good news. We can turn that around.
That's
it's
right.
time to spring into action and stand with the hardworking families who raise the food we trust.
That's why we trust GoodRanchers.com. All their products are born, raised, and harvested.
No, I'd rather them harvested. Would they harvest them too, John? Because
that's the street term for harvested.
No.
In the U.S. of A. So when you buy from them, you're supporting American farmers and ranchers who've fed this country for generations.
John, I don't know about you, and I don't know about harvested, but my family is all about Good Ranchers better than organic chicken. Get in my mouth.
Hey, we love it too, Dave. It's
Yes.
not just you. Because listen to this. It comes with Italian seasoned and garlic pepper chicken breast.
Oh, my goodness.
Having trustworthy, transparently sourced protein has been a game changer for
Your
us.
game has been the same for a long time, but it's different
now. It's changing.
As part of their Spring into Action special right now, when you subscribe to any Good Ranchers box, you'll get free bacon, ground beef, seed oil-free chicken nuggets, or salmon in every box for a year and $40 off with the code DADVILLE. Their best offer ever.
I felt like I knew where you were going with that.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
code DADVILLE for our best offer yet. Visit GoodRanchers.com to shop, subscribe, and stand with American ranchers.
Good Ranchers, American meat delivered.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Again, I'm just now in the last year realizing a lot of this stuff with the mental load. I think that Amy...
I've been telling him for
I know. So this is what you were talking about. Yeah. I think Amy and every wife out there, if we're going to pose it that way, stereotypical guy and woman in those roles, she needs to take a 3-week vacation, maybe a month vacation. Go away for a month. Because I think you need at least that much time to really start to feel the mental load. Because like we were saying earlier, I recognize that it's a tough thing to explain because it's not one thing. It's the relentlessness of all the things constantly. And you can kind of seemingly take care of each thing at face value, but then you forgot to, take into account if Luke is going to take this thing to this party, well, what about Livy? She didn't get that thing. And if you take it to this party, are all the other moms' kids going to take snacks to the party? I thought we agreed on no, all that kind of stuff. I think it should start with that. Whoever feels like they have most of the draining mental load or whatever, they need to take a vacation for a month.
Hey, if you can do that, I mean, honestly, living it is the best way to experience it. But most a lot of women won't even step away from their family to get that time. But I had to have surgery when our kids were, younger, but going to school of some kind, whether it's kindergarten or I don't know, preschool or something. And I remember Chad's I'm going to fly my mom in. And I was like, no, you're not. No, you are not. Because
he's like, okay, then I'm going to fly a mom in.
I know. Well, he was.
I'm going to fly out.
At the time, we were living with my parents because we were renovating a house.
He was getting double moms.
He was getting double
barrel moms.
And I had I do all these sneaky things in my relationship, but I talked to my mom and I was like, don't you pack their lunches. Don't you. You can feed them dinner.
You sleep until 10:30 every day,
yes,
Mom.
Don't you dare hide in your room.
Act dead if it gets real bad.
He needs this. But he didn't fly her in. And I remember when I got home, I still, I had to travel for it. And I got home and it's living in it did offer a different kind of perspective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where it was then he would get up in the morning and he started packing lunches. And I was like, there we go.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. John and I think something that is tricky about not having a 9-to-5 is that tricky is a terrible word. I really wish I hadn't used that word. That's great.
You can edit that out.
We're learning, guys. It's real-time learning. And if there isn't grace for the journey, what are we doing? Something that is good, but I think tricky initially is the way I should say it.
Back to tricky.
We're not having a 9-to-5 is, John and I are around. If we're not playing shows, we're here. I'm in my studio. He's in his studio right behind each of our houses, palatial estates. And so it's tricky because, Annie and I had a lot of learning once the kids were born about when I was accessible, when I wasn't. And, now, once that sort of got ground out of me, now it's so much easier. And John's the same. It's it's so much easier to help and do what we need to do and whatever. And the greatest compliment Annie, I think, ever gives people when I'm sitting around her and she's talking about me is her saying, oh no, if I fall off, Dave knows what to do. That is just, but I say that and it's a huge asterisk. That's because I work in the backyard. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if I had a job where I was away, it's not as doable. But
it's hard.
It's harder. And so I think it's funny because just because of proximity in my job and John's jobs, our accessibility to do these things and to sort of help carry some of the weight or at least appreciate it because I'm front and center watching her do these things. I'm like, man, that is a lot where I think, probably a lot of men just don't realize because they just physically aren't there to even see it, to your point,
Yeah. And so it requires a little extra effort. And I want to be clear, we don't all need to know all the things.
Right.
But if you're not actually making an effort in this area, then you're not really ever going to be able to kind of step in or show that appreciation. So I talk about in the book, the actual things that are required to take more initiative in your relationship. And so really, in order to take initiative, you have to be in the know. So that's what you're saying. You're I'm right here. So I'm kind of in and out of family life. So I'm in the know with what's going on. I know where the peanut butter is. I know stuff, And so when you know things.
I like that that's the top of your list, by the way.
peanut
mean,
butter.
It's a big deal.
That's
hungry.
up there.
Protein.
Yeah. You lose track of that. It all goes.
Oh my God. Armageddon. It's Lord of the Flies in the Barnes house.
But when you couple knowing with action, that's initiative taking. So,
Oh, wow. I love that.
yeah, it's
really
like that's all you got. So the more that you know about your wife, the better you can take care of her in the ways that she needs. The more you know about your kids, the more you can kind of jump in and meet their needs. And the more that you know about how your home and family life functions, the more you can kind of like seamlessly tap in and tap out. And so I challenge men in the book, or, you know, if your situation's reversed, I challenge women, but I refer to something called the Buffett formula. And Warren Buffett used this to apply
I read it,
to
buffet.
like
That makes a lot more sense now. Sorry, keep going.
Both
To how
valid
he-
directions, though.
Both are great.
We
I
could
have
do
one
the
that works at
buffet.
Ryan's Steakhouse like a champ.
It's to how he accumulates knowledge. And so if you apply that to home and family life, the Buffett formula is that every day you go to bed knowing more than when you woke up that morning. And so if you just every day learn one thing about your wife, learn one thing about your kids, learn one thing about how your home and family functions, every day you're more in the know, which can help you step into initiative taking. And it becomes really powerful for men to feel like this is tangible.
Yeah.
This is very specific.
Well, and it's action oriented
It's
too. which is
action oriented. Yes.
It's
You're like, I got that.
It's a softball to men.
So that reminded me. You have on page 79 of your book.
Oh, boy.
I thought this was great because, again, I mean, anything tangible, anything that like a guy can be like, okay, that's a thing. I can take a screenshot of that.
Yes.
And I can actually, you just gave me directions. There's no, I mean, there's some nuance, but if do you have your book completely memorized?
She
she
of
has a
course.
signed
I just
copy of
opened
it.
it
Because I thought
oh my gosh.
these 3 questions in 79 were really, really great. And again, I think for all the guys listening or whoever, if this is useful to you, I think that this is such a great thing to take that you can actually implement and apply in your relationship if you're down to read those.
Sure. So it's what's something that has changed about you since we first met? What's something I used to do for you that you wish I still did now?
That's a great question.
Right? Talk about all that you could
I'm not
do with that
loving these so
response.
far. Keep going. I have a little pushback. Let's
Annie
hear it.
actually texted me, does she have a bigger print version of this book? And she was like, I just want page 79.
Get her to sign it.
The last one was, if you could plan the perfect day, what would it look like?
And why am I not in it? Which you didn't have, but I sort of inferred. Why does it not include me being there?
Probably it wouldn't. Well,
Yeah.
But I
those
just
are-
think that that's
those are
really great.
Really, really good.
Because that especially that second question,
yeah.
that's something that Amy and I, through our relationship, we have this sort of pattern of like whenever we would get into like a big fight or something like that, and this is much healthier on her side of things, she's like, I said what I needed to say. We got to a point where I feel like you heard me. We're done. We're good. We can cuddle on the couch now. And I'm like, I used to need literally like a couple days to recover because I felt so wounded and I messed up, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I would harp on is like, I would go existential big picture with our relationship. I'm like, are we careening down the wrong path? And this was just a red flag that I'm going to look back on.
Oh, you're bringing up some stuff for me.
But that second question is like, yeah, what's the thing? I want to know, did I used to get it right? And then now I'm like a frog in the water.
You're a
and I'm
failure.
like,
You're a
yeah, I
failure.
didn't even realize, I don't do that thing for you anymore. So I just think that's such a great question for everybody to ask to sort of, maybe course correct,
Okay, I'm going to bring something up because you made me think of it. I feel like men are stereotyped as not that emotional. Like men are.
You can show anger.
They
and
just
that's
get
it.
angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I talked about a study in there, but it talked about emotional reactivity and how men tend to react with more emotion quicker than women. And then as they age, they sort of learn that they need to mask that emotion. And again, like there's just I don't know. It's the world I live in on social media, but there's like a lot of hostility out there toward men. And I think this is really important to understand because there's a pattern in relationships where either the man tends to get really defensive when things come up, or like what you're bringing up, which is that like it takes you a while to come down from that emotional intensity of some sort of confrontation or argument.
Yeah.
Chad and I have talked multiple times where I'm like, you cannot like sit it like we can have a not a heated discussion, but like a tough discussion for a while, and I'm fine. I'm like, let's do this. Let's peel this back. Let's figure this out. And he gets so upset, and he'll be like, I just don't know if we're okay anymore. And it's like, whoa, this is
You're
normal.
like, I was just asking where the peanut butter was.
Where's the vault of peanut butter that we keep? Yeah.
But I think it's a common thread that we tend to personalize. We tend to think it's just our partner or it's just us. But I think men tend to shame spiral really easily when we enter into difficult discussions. And so we kind of got to like understand that when we think about how we move through these things, how we need to bounce back from these things. And men need to have a little insight into what's going on with them. I read in another book once how it's just men almost need to learn how to regulate their heart rate during difficult discussions because it tends to get out of control very, very quickly, whereas women can kind of sit in it for a long time. And so that's pretty normal.
I feel like this could be a 3-hour interview. So I'm like, you should see the notes. I'm like, we have to get to this thing I want to talk about. But you actually set this up really well. So the other thing I wanted to make sure, because there's so many things, but I really want to make sure we talk about was she wants, he wants. And so I'm gonna because you sort of dovetailed joint so well into the he wants. We'll do that first. And so you have, these 3 things: peace, affection, and respect, which you call PAR, which is just an acronym for those who don't know what that means. But it's great. And something that I thought that I just, I could talk about this for so long, and you just did so well and so eloquently. But I remember reading this book, and you may know this book. I can't remember what it's called, but a friend of mine recommended really early in my marriage. And it was basically this, I don't know what the guy's qualification was, but he was some sort of doctor. And it was just kind of this book on basically like how a man's brain works. And it was sort of written to wives saying like, this is just data. So you can be as mad as you want, but this is how. And one of the things that he said, and because I was talking to my friend at the time about this, and he was like, dude, I just read this book. You got to read it. And the guy kind of makes this point that like chemically, neurologically, whatever it would be in the scenario, that when a man is faced with big emotions, that it's basically fight or flight. And so there's this extreme sort of like, I'm either going to lean into this or I got to get out of this. But there's not as you said so well, Morgan, kind of a calculated, okay, let me hear what she's having to say. And the point that the guy makes is like, look, this is how it is. It's like the end. So now it's, what do you do with that? And so for some men, it's going to be like, hey, I hear you. Can I take a beat? Because I'm going to probably say things I don't mean, or I'm going to get defensive. For some, it's telling the wife like, hey, if there are ways to say things that don't trigger me quite as much, that you can still get the point across where I don't feel quite as attacked or whatever. But it was so helpful for me. And you do such a good job kind of walking through this when it comes to peace, like that first part of the acronym, like how, and I love this quote, what did it say? Men feel loved and secure when there's less fighting, less stress, and less emotionality when there's peace. And obviously that's impossible to have that, at a high clip. And I immediately said a prayer for all my dads that just have girls, including John. But like, it just the idea that like,
and I should say if you have it all the time, it's unhealthy.
That's right. Because something's not right.
Yeah.
There's stuff being masked. But I think, I just, man, it resonates with me. And I'm glad that at least I don't always do it well, but I can tell I get really, like all of a sudden I'm like, why is my heart rate up? Why am I like pupils dilated? Like I'm sharpening this wood stick into a spear, what's happening right now. And I think to your point, but it's so helpful for me to know that, as you say, that the things that we want, peace, affection, respect, but peace is such a big part of that. Is this idea that like you sort of looking out on your quote unquote kingdom and going, okay, everybody's happy. We've got enough. Everybody's good. And in those moments where you're not, it's crazy, to your point, just physically, chemically, what happens in me when that sort of there's an affront to that, or there's some challenge to that, especially from Annie, because I just get like, whoo, and you know, and you offer these great ways to think about that, you know, as navigate that as a woman with your husband, you know.
Yeah, and I think my hope is that throughout the book, like information, so like having this insight becomes empowering to relate to it differently.
Yeah.
So that it's like, oh, that really fits. Okay, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to step into change in my relationship? How are we going to understand each other a little bit better so we can navigate these times differently?
So that's peace. Can you speak to affection and respect?
Yeah, affection is just like the warmth in the relationship and all the way to your sexual relationship. But I think we sort of minimize sometimes the importance of our affectionate life in a relationship. Sort of, I think women, especially when we're pretty overwhelmed, can kind of feel like I'm taking care of you in all of these ways. What, you need this too? Like give me a break. And so, but this is really important for men. It's how I talk about how men and women want the same thing. We want to feel safe we want to feel loved, but we just want these things met in different ways.
Yes. Yep.
And so when you feel desired by your partner, when you feel like they are interested in you, whether it's just like hugs and kisses or holding your hand or all of these things help men feel safe and loved in their relationship. And it's important that we don't minimize that we talk about that we nurture that part of our relationship.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I just want to say it again because I think it's so profound that we do want the same thing. That was something I underlined because I think it's easy for guys, especially I'm a guy, this is all I know, but kind of feel like, well, no, we don't. I want this and she wants this. It's like, no. If you boil that way, way, way down, it is those two things. That's really what I want, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in this second hour, we're just going to focus on chapter 20 here. Which, we keep alluding to chapter 20, and obviously the listener doesn't know. What is it called? Hang on. It's like great sex or something. It's something like a plan for a great sex life. Chapter 20. So I did want to say one thing about that this is something that I love tattoos. I got a bunch of tattoos. This may be my next tattoo.
Oh.
Quote, "You don't find your man-child sexy." That needs to be something that I keep in focus. Like if Amy feels like she is just taking care of me, like she has 2 daughters and a son, a 42-year-old son, that's not sexy.
Yeah.
You know?
If it is, there's a lot of things we need to unpack. That's
hey, listen, if it works, it works. This is not, you know. But it makes a ton of sense, and it it is one of the consequences, I suppose, of the chronic mental overload that Amy would be having. But and obviously we don't have a ton of time left here, but I did want to make sure that we saved some time for chapter 20 because that's a big part of our marriages and our relationships. You know.
Yeah. I mean,
I bet you this isn't what the women
about,
podcasts want to talk about. They're like, let's just skip that.
Well, let's talk about the man-child sexy thing, because this is the dynamic that tends to happen a lot of times when the mental load isn't really navigated well. And a lot of times guys aren't like fully understanding why this occurs, but it's that she becomes sort of like the leader of the home or like the coach of the home. And when she comes to him and she wants, let's talk about the mental load, and it's met with defensiveness, either she's going to get louder, which makes her the nagging mom, or she's going to stuff it down, which is going to drive a wedge in the relationship. And if he continually either dismisses or pushes back or just doesn't step up or goes to just, I don't know, just tell me what to do, just make me a list, it still keeps her as the coach. And so it feels like then this parent-child dynamic starts to develop. And again, when you get in this sort of dynamic, it's not even just that she probably won't find him sexy, but for a lot of people, it's like he's not going to really be feeling that either. Like, who wants the nagging mom? And so it creates all sorts of issues, because then it's like, well, she doesn't really like who she is in these moments, so that's going to further erode desire. And so it becomes a dangerous dynamic for couples to get into.
It's such it's like a delicate little spiral. I mean,
the ecosystem is tricky.
There's so many different ways in which it can sort of start spiraling out of, one thing leads to another, and then you find yourself
and kind of.
But what's so interesting about it, which I do think is a grace from God, if done well, is that for both sides, and I mean, again, this is so stereotypical, but it's just for the sake of this example, for men, sex can be such an amazing reset. Mm-hmm. So you can really be having a hard time in communication. So for a man, it's almost, I think a lot of times, this unbelievable fail-safe way to just, he suddenly feels so close. Now, that's not her. I'm speaking just for him. But then in the other way, it's like if the guy can just get over himself and say, hey, I'm just going to do what you need me to do. Like, let me help. Let me do that. I'll do this. Let me tell you the things that I know you want to, and mean it. It can be a reset for her. And so it's this hysterical way that God has sort of gone,
I know,
this is how it's got to be. But it's ultimately better for both of you. It makes both of you more holy. It makes both of you more sacrificial, which is how I want you to be. Mm-hmm. But it's crazy. I mean, Annie and I have seen that so many times in our marriage. And I feel like early on, she even said she had gotten counsel from somebody. I was like, look, there are times when you just need to have sex. You just do.
Totally.
It's going to be better for both of you. Not just him, but for both of you, And that's not always the case. That's not what I'm saying. But, I found that to be, obviously I have. I'm always like, yeah, it feels like always probably works, babe.
Keep in touch with that person, Annie. Do you have a weekly meeting set up?
Annie, she's your phone friend.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my gosh.
But it's amazing to me how both of those things, that when your wife feels that genuine thing and you just get out of your way and you go, you know what, I'm just going to do this. It's going to help. It does help. And the same if she's like, those things really do help. They can be profoundly helpful.
Helps him feel secure and loved, right?
Yes.
That's like what it goes back to.
That's right.
I find that it's what you're describing. I call it the standoff in relationships. So it's usually a sexual standoff where maybe he wants more in the bedroom.
That was my favorite
and
Usher song.
She wants more outside the bedroom, and neither person's willing to give until they get.
That's
and
right.
I think that's what you're saying. Is like we have to have some humility in our relationship,
That's
some
right.
grace in
That's
our
right.
relationship,
That's
and we have
right.
to step toward each other.
That's right. That's right.
And I know we're so close on time, but I think something that can be helpful, again, that information is empowering, helpful to understand is the difference between spontaneous and responsive desire. And this is something that I found really empowering in my own relationship, which is men tend to be really spontaneous in their desire. Statistics show that the majority of men fall into this camp. This is kind of the ideal camp, what you see in movies and shows, which is like, they're just, whatever, like a cool breeze. And they're like, I'm in the mood, right? It just does not take much. For women, the majority of women statistically fall in responsive, which is that you've got to participate to feel in the mood. And so if you know that about yourself and you guys are in the standoff and you're the one willing to step into it, you can't use being in the mood as your guiding light here because it doesn't happen until you participate. So sometimes we have to, it's like a decision of, it's a will to participate and start that relationship. And, Chad and I always joke, we're like, it's never a bad idea. Like you might not want to in the beginning. And they're like, I'm glad that we did that. And so I think that's really helpful for couples to know. And obviously this is, only in the confines of a safe relationship. But another thing too is that for men to feel connected, sex is often that bridge to feel connected in the relationship. For women, we usually have to feel connected to feel in the mood. So again, it's this at odds thing that requires us to humble ourselves, to have grace, to understand our spouse really well, and then to each take a step toward each other.
Yeah. So, okay, before we go, because this was going to get skipped and everybody was going to say, and John was just so excited about getting to chapter 20 that we skipped this, but I do want you just before we leave, because we need to address this too. So we talked about what he wants, right? Peace, affection, respect. And just lastly, can you talk to what she wants, which is pursuit, appreciation, and reliability? Because we have obviously a lot of dads and men that listen, and I think this is really important. So again, she wants pursuit, appreciation, and reliability. Can you kind of speak to that too as we come to a close?
Yeah. So to be pursued is it's like you want your partner to feel like you're worth the trouble. It's just like so often we settle into our roles in our relationships over time where that kind of like pursuit that we do in the beginning of a relationship goes away and we sort of fall into this more transactional relationship. And I think women a lot of times don't know how to articulate this. I actually spoke recently and this woman's like, can you just start talking about examples of what I might need in my relationship so I can figure it out?
Wow.
And so I went right to pursuit. And I was like, I bet you feel like he doesn't sort of like desire to spend time with you, to sit and talk with you, to take you out and point you, like, I miss you. And she's like, that's the thing.
Wow.
And so I think a lot of times women, we're pouring so much into everyone else. We're giving and we're thinking about others so much. We want that one important person in our life, our spouse, to think about us, to desire time with us, to miss us, and to initiate that time and that connection. So that's that feeling of being pursued. Appreciation, we kind of talked about, which is like, we want to be like considered valuable in the work that we do to move our family life forward, to care for everyone so well. A lot of us, if you work outside the home, yeah, but like inside the home, none of that's paid. So you're not really getting, there's no feedback loop for a lot of the work that we do in the home. And if it's like your toddlers, that's the worst feedback loop you can get. And so I remember just this, like, I told you this was an argument between my husband and I forever. And he's like, I just don't need it. And I was like, whatever. I'm like, bring it, buddy. I was like, you get paid.
Is that what Chad sounds like, by the way?
Yes.
Okay,
it's spot on impression.
Chad. I was going to say.
Sounds so
Ask my
Chad.
kids.
So Chad.
Spot on. But like, you get paid, you get a bonus that reflects your work. You have monthly reviews where you get feedback and you get, built up. I sat through a 6-hour awards banquet where everyone just poured into everyone. You are full. But you are my only source of feedback in home and family life. And we have to remember that usually our partners are the only source of that. So that's important. Yeah. Reliability just means that you do what you say you're going to do, that you show up, that you're predictable. There's something really that feels safe to women. It makes them feel loved when they have a partner who's like, I know exactly what I'm going to get. And whether that's, I'm going to come to them with a need and I know they're going to hear me. And if I say, oh, like I'm pretty overwhelmed about XYZ, I know they're going to step up. And they're going to care about that. So that predictability really fosters that sense of safety in a relationship.
Morgan, you are the best. Listen, we love you. We love your books. Again, it's called A Better Share. This is so. I really needed to read this. I'm not kidding. I feel like it was.
Seriously,
a good,
like the best compliment you could ever give me. I
mean
really
that.
appreciate it.
It is so good.
Multiple,
and it really has
multiple
challenged
times
me.
reading this book where I'm like, oh, that's good.
No,
I need to.
All I'm thinking about is I just need to go inside, hug Annie, tell her how great she is. She's doing such a
So
good
many new
do
tattoos
something for
to get.
her. Don't tell her.
Don't tell her. No, dadgummit. No,
Dave, that's
rent
too
a limo.
easy.
We're gonna rent a
That's
limo
too
and we're
easy.
gonna drive around Nashville, and I'm just gonna scream how much I love her out of the sunroof.
She'll be like, that didn't do
She's
it.
like, "What are we doing?
God,
This is
we're
way too
further
expensive.
away
This
now
is
than we've
another
ever been."
decision. Gosh.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Everybody needs to check out the book. It's awesome. You're awesome. Tell Chad we miss him.
I will. Thank you so much for having me.
See you.
Are you looking for your new favorite podcast that's both entertaining and will challenge you in your walk with Jesus? Hey, we're Mac and Ken's from the For the Girl podcast.
Every Tuesday, we break down everything that we wish someone had told us in our 20s. From faith and relationships to wild career transitions, we're getting real about all of our mess-ups and the things God has taught us along the way.
Think of us as your hilarious weekly dose of honest conversation with your internet besties who've been exactly where you currently are.
So come check out For the Girl on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you love to listen to podcasts. And make sure to click follow on our show so that each new episode is dropped right into your personal feed.